friends, I'm Jude. Welcome back to my channel. And today we have a special guest with us. It's Joy. Joy from Well with Joy. Welcome, Joy.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
So glad to have you here today. And I have been following Joy on her blog, wellwithjoy.net. And also she has a YouTube channel, Well with Joy, and her Instagram page. So I'll link all of that below so you can tap into her for very inspiring and just uplifting, positive messages that you are sending out there. And we all need that today. So can we open up? Would you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself, Joy?
Sure. I'm 51 years old. I'm married to a Catholic deacon, and I am the mother of 10 and the grandmother of 7. I'm a stay-at-home mom, have been since about 1999, and pretty busy with just family life. I do have a YouTube channel and my blog that I try to work at. And quite often my husband and I are involved in different ministries because since he is a deacon, that automatically makes me a deacon's wife. And so I am involved in a lot of ministries also.
Beautiful, beautiful. Like you said, it really has spurred and instilled and just kind of put that ember on the fire for your faith too, obviously being married to a deacon, and you walk that road together. So that's beautiful.
Yeah.
So Joy, can you share with us your conversion story?
Okay. It's a long story. I was brought up Pentecost. My mother was oneness Pentecostal, and my father was a Seventh-day Adventist. My father didn't practice his faith, so my mother took the role of the spiritual head in our home and raised us Pentecostal. So that meant that we were in church a lot. Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday evenings, Friday evenings, for every camp meeting, for every tent meeting, whatever it was, we were there. So we spent a lot of our childhood in church. My mother was a woman of prayer, and she was a woman that I always saw with the Bible open. She was reading the Bible, studying the Bible. And we had a dysfunctional home a little bit. My father was an alcoholic. He still provided very well for us and everything, but he was an alcoholic. And my mother was codependent, and there was some issues there. So seeing her cry out in prayer was something that I saw regularly and knew that God and played a big part of her life. So we moved a lot as a child. My father was transferred from state to state and even into Canada. And so we lived all over. And every time we moved, my mother would make sure that we found a church and we attended. So we always had a church that we were going to. And that made me realize how important it was. Just her example of that made me realize that it was really an important part of our life. It was an important part of her life. And so it became part of myself and my 2 sisters' life. At about age 13, we finally moved back to my parents' hometown. And I started high school shortly after, or 8th grade there, I guess I started. And after we moved back, my mother thought it was important for us to be baptized. And as a Pentecostal, we didn't believe in infant baptism. And so once we were able to make our own decision, we were able then to agree to be baptized. And so one Sunday morning, we marched down after church, down to a local river. And my sisters and I were baptized in the river by our pastor. And we had all the church members on the banks of the river. My great aunt was playing a guitar, and they were all singing hymns as we were baptized on a rainy, cold day. The sun did come out, though, as we were being baptized. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful experience and something I will never forget. And so that was my bringing up. After that, I had high school, went through high school, still attended church regularly, still was part of the church community. And I myself, I had a prayer life growing up my whole life, always had a prayer life, and always was reading the Bible. That was something that we did as Protestant. Bible was very important. So that was something that was just part of my life, prayer and reading the Bible. And I never really knew much about other religions. There was never an opportunity for me to learn, and especially other Catholics. I never knew any Catholics. Maybe a couple distant family members were married to a Catholic, and I had a couple of school classmates that were Catholic, but I would never have known because they never talked about their faith, and I never saw any sign of their faith. So I really didn't know much about the Catholic Church at all, except for my mother had shared with me what she thought to be true about the Catholic Church, that they worship statues, that they prayed to Mary, that they followed the Pope, who was the Antichrist. And that's basically what she told me. And I remember in my high school years asking her, there's so many religions, because there was. I mean, we went to a church, and right next door there was another church, and we would disagree, but we'd sort of be the same religion. So I asked her, I said, how do we know that we are right, that we're the right church? And she said, we just know. We just know we're right. We follow the Bible and we're right. So I took that as, I guess I just took it as, okay, that's all right. I'll just go on and living the right way. So after I graduated high school, there was a period of time where I started working. I was a cook at a truck stop, and it was more of a family restaurant. It's called a truck stop, and I was a cook there. And I had met someone there who he was interested in me, and I had a very low self-esteem. I was very shy. I think it came from moving different places, always being a new girl, and then also my home life. You know, I had a alcoholic father, and my mother had her own issues, so there wasn't really confirmation or that unconditional love shown to my sisters and I. So that's whatever, I had a low self-esteem. So this person who automatically showed an interest in me just enthralled me. It was like somebody's interested in me. And so I wanted to date this man. And he was quite a bit older. He had been married twice before. And when my mother heard, she was so upset. And she told me that I needed to leave home if I wanted to date him. And she did this, and it wouldn't have been a big deal, but she did it in a way that was very humiliating and embarrassing at my workplace in front of many people. So I left. And I ended up going to stay with a friend. And this was in July of 1989. And I went to live with a friend. And then by January of 1990, I was married to this man. And when I had left, when my mother had turned her back on me, my whole church community did the same. They turned their back on me. I would see them in a store, they would turn around, walk the other way. Most of my family turned their back on me. My father and my sisters did, keep in contact with me, but everybody else just turned away, and I felt very alone. And I never attended church again. I left, and I wasn't going to go back there again. So fast forward, I was married at 19. At 20, I had my first child. And 2 years later, I had another child. And then 6 months to a year after that, I was on my own. There was infidelity and neglect in the marriage, and I left and took my 2 children and ended up living in a low-income apartment complex on welfare alone with my 2 children. And I was at a very, very low place. And I think that this is where my conversion really started, because I was Christian. I grew up Christian. I loved God and I wanted him as part of my life. But at this point, I was in desperation, and I was desperate, and I was alone, and I needed more. And I needed God to step into my life and change the trajectory of it. I knew I didn't want to be stuck alone where I was, and I didn't want this to be my bed, and now I'm going to lie in it. I made this, and I didn't want that to be my story.
Right, and of course you had your children. I can
Right.
only imagine, your children, you were responsible for them. You wanted to be able to provide for them and be able to, put food on the table and give them a good life, a safe life.
Yep. Yep. So it was a very low place. And I know that these are the places that Satan uses to make us, to try to create a fear in us and make us believe that this is it. This is your life. This is this is where you are, and you're stuck. And I did not want to be stuck. And I had seen God move in many situations, and I'd seen him heal people, and I'd seen people's lives change, and I knew he could do it for me. And so I prayed and I called out and I said, God, you can do this. One word from you and you can change my situation. You can bring me out of this. I want to be married. I want somebody in my life that will love me, will love my children, and above all else, love you. And that was one of the things that was very important to me, because all through my whole life, my mother would take us to church and sit in a pew alone. My father never went. And I remember at a young age thinking, when I get married, I want my husband with me in church. That's one of the things I want, that I would desire. So I prayed.
To share that. I mean, that spiritual journey, you don't want to make that alone. You're trying to raise your children to have, God bless your mom, because she did plant that seed. It was something that she showed you that was important no matter what, through all of those different issues that happened throughout your young years. So, thank goodness that desire, but you surrendered then, Joy. You surrendered in this very desperate moment.
Yeah, I did. I knew I couldn't change anything. I knew I needed guidance, and I knew I needed to surrender. So in those few years that I was married, one of the things that I did was I went to nursing school, and I was a licensed practical nurse. So after this desperate prayer, I ended up finding a job as a nurse and working full time. I ended up having to put my children in daycare because I was working, but I got off welfare. I started to support myself and them. And it was something I needed to do. I needed to see that because of my decisions, I could either go downhill or I could move forward and uphill. And so it really helped move me along. But that prayer
must have been such a difficult undertaking. Like you said, being where you were, you were at the depths of despair, and it was really up to you to find that strength, not only emotionally, physically, to be able to do that for your children. So that's beautiful.
Yeah, it was a hard time. But by prayer, I still wanted somebody in my life. I still wanted a husband. I still wanted a father for my children, somebody who'd be there, love my children, and someone who just wanted to be with me. And lo and behold, one of the women that I had met at this new nursing job, we became friends. And she told me one day, she goes, I know someone who would be perfect for you. She goes, he is divorced and he has a young child, but she said, he just loves God, and I just know he'd be perfect for you. So we had talked about it a few times, and then it wasn't long after that, she had an opportunity to introduce us. And we met, and we just, from that moment forward, we were together. It wasn't long after I asked me out for our first date, and we were together. Now, I do want to emphasize that when I prayed for someone to be Christian and to love me and to love my children and want to be with us and grow a family, I didn't say what religion. And it just happens that this man was Catholic. And like I said before, that knowing who was Catholic and who wasn't, it really didn't make a difference to me because I never saw the faith lived out in any way. But when I had met him and I found out he was Catholic, that was something that wasn't a hindrance to me, but it didn't open a door for me. It didn't make me want to become Catholic or anything right off. But we started to, and one of the big things that we talked about was, of course, faith. He was very faithful, attended Mass regularly, and his faith was very important to him. So he would bring up faith. And he knew I was Pentecostal and never pushed, never insisted on me accept or believe or anything, but we would talk. And I remember we get into some talks about different beliefs. I mean, he'd ask me a question just about Adam and Eve, and he would start to say something. I'd say like, no, that's it. I don't want to talk anymore. I don't want to hear anymore. I know I'm right. You think you're right. I know I'm right. And that would be it. But little by little, things he would say or questions he would ask would start to open my heart. And one of the things that he brought up was actually birth control and the church's teaching on birth control. And as a woman who never even thought of that at all, except that when I was 18, I went for a physical and they put you on, this is part of it, you go on birth control, and that's just part of what you do. I remember looking at it and saying, you can't tell me, a church can't tell me what I can do with my body. Absolutely not. And I said, I don't even want to talk about it anymore. And anyway, little by little, so he would say, so I thought, well, I'm going to research this. So I started to look up the church's teaching on it. And the only thing that I could find out was they were right. They were true. What they said about birth control and the church's teaching on it was absolutely true. And it was something that started to turn my heart, because I thought, if they are right on this thing that seemed so, in my religion, in my upbringing, insignificant, because it really didn't matter much. That just started, it was like a fish hook in my heart, just started to tug just a little bit. And so we discussed it. And after a while, I came to the conclusion, yes, they were right. And yes, I could accept that. And he was right. And that was something that I would agree with, that birth control was not right, and that we should be open to life. So anyway,
I credit you too, Joy. I credit you for doing your homework, doing your research, instead of just, kind of turning, and that was the Holy Spirit too in that process. You could have just turned away, absolutely not. And, this is how I feel. And this is, like you said, it wasn't of any importance to you before that time, but you were open. Your heart was open, even just a little bit.
Yeah, it was just that. And so I started to just be more open to when he shared something that possibly what he was sharing could be true, because I just saw it through the birth control. I just saw that the wisdom of this church was just, I had never seen that before. So it wasn't long, and he invited me to Mass, and I attended a couple of times. And I remember being so nervous walking in, and it was true. They had statues. And that was different for me to walk in and see that. And the other thing I noticed was the women had pants on. Now, I never would wear pants to church. No woman in my church would ever wear pants to church. So that was a little set me back, it caused me to take a notice of that. And but they read scripture. They were reading the Bible in Mass. And okay, so they read the Bible, so that wasn't too bad. And they were all there, and everybody was praying, and there was Mass, and there was praying, and there was reverence, and it was like, okay, well, I really don't see much wrong here. There's statues here, but that really didn't bother me. And it wasn't long after that my husband, he wasn't my husband then, but he invited me to an Easter vigil. And I didn't know what to expect, but an Easter vigil, they're just so special. And when I went in there, and that light from the back of the church started lighting up through that dark church as everybody passed on their candle, passed the light, signifying the light of Christ coming into the world, I was like, tears were welling up, and you could just feel, you could feel the Holy Spirit there. You could feel God's presence there. And the meaning behind it, and the depth of it just touched my heart. And just in that moment, it was like every obstacle for me to come to belief was removed. Now, it didn't mean I didn't have misunderstandings or things I didn't understand, fully, but that objection was removed. And so
such a grace-filled moment. If anybody out there hasn't experienced an Easter vigil, they're long, we know that. They could be 3 hours or so. But a lot of people, but please go to that service, because it is one, like Joyce said, that is so beautiful and so grace-filled. And, you know, that service, that moment through that darkness that we were traveling in during Lent and walking alongside Jesus every step of the way, and you were in your own life too, but to have that revealed on that special Easter Vigil day, so that was beautiful.
It was. And so after that, it was, I wanted to learn more about becoming Catholic. I wanted to join in fully in this. And my husband, or at that time, he had asked me to marry him, so we were engaged. And he told me about RCIA, the Rite of Christian Initiation for Adults. I did not know anything about it. I had never heard of it, but he said what it is classes, and you learn about the Catholic faith. And he said, it doesn't mean you have to become Catholic. It just means you can learn about it and walk through it. So I signed up and we went together and into this church community where I didn't know anybody, but the people there, faithful Catholics that walked with me through that time, and the priest that became such a dear friend to us. It was just a special time. And they were so patient with my questions and, you know, me saying, well, my mother said, well, you know, and it was just beautiful to go through that. And so in 1998, April 11, 1998, myself and my two children were welcomed into the Catholic Church at the Easter Vigil. And it was such a beautiful, beautiful experience. And I will say that one of the things at this Easter Vigil was I had to be baptized, because when I was baptized in that river so long ago, the words and the formula that the pastor used was not the right formula. It wasn't in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So I had to be rebaptized. And that was a little, when they told me that, I was a little, you know, I didn't understand it because I had such a profound experience on my baptism in the river that that sort of insulted me a little bit. But then came back to around that. I believed what I was doing was right. And I believed this church was right. And even though I didn't have an answer for everything, I was going to do it the right way, the way they said. And so I resigned to it. And so we were, myself and my son and my daughter, they were 7 and 5, and we were baptized together on that Easter Vigil, which was a beautiful, beautiful thing. And then a week later, exactly a week later, on April 18th, 1998, my husband and I were married in the Catholic Church. And one of the things that I failed to mention that really helped too with my conversion and pulling me to the truth and the fullness of the Catholic Church was we had both been married. And so we had to go through the annulment process. And that in itself is very healing, because you have to really take a look at the decision you made, the path you took to that decision, and the importance of this covenant that you are making before God, and with this other person. It's to be taken seriously. And that really just ingrained in me how serious this, you know, to be standing before God and making this covenant, that the covenant you make with your husband is very, very important, and it's not something to be taken lightly or easily broken. So I had my annulment that I had to go through, and that meant talking with me. The tribunal had to talk with my ex-husband, had to talk with family members, and my annulment was very quick. There was different reasons. It was deemed not a valid marriage, and of course, my husband, his was a different experience, but we both had to go through that in our way. But it was really, it was just a blessing going through that annulment process. It was just such a blessing. And I went through it because I wanted to be married in the church. My husband had told me, you know, I didn't need to convert, but he wanted to be married in the church. And I wanted to, so I had started that process, and we had both been going through our own, but it's a very healing experience. And
Joy, I just want to say that I think that was a beautiful example that your husband gave, you know, being supportive. You certainly knew how important his faith was, but as you mentioned, he didn't pressure you. He exposed you, he shared with you. And I just think that is a wonderful example of how somebody loved you very much, and he wanted to be able to share with you and your family, your children, the experience of the faith, but he did it in such a way that you had to come to that point. You had to, you know, make that decision. You had to feel called as you did at that particular moment. But having him just support you, what a beautiful testimony of his love for you.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yep. So that was I mean, and a conversion is, of course, we're all have an ongoing conversion, everybody, every day, and then we're always searching and learning. And so, but that's how I came to the Catholic Church, was
and here you are now. You are still growing, as you said. Every moment we're learning more. We're on that faith journey each and every day of our lives, and so you're sharing that with others, and many who will be watching this video can relate to a lot of the moments that you shared. So we really appreciate you being so open and vulnerable with a lot of sensitive times in your life and painful times in your life. But this gives others encouragement and hope, and knowing that faith journey, even though we know we get to those moments where we might feel alone, we might feel desperate, and we call out, but just that surrender in that moment, that you had that surrender, that God is there for us and he does hear us. I'm so excited on your channel because you come back and you started this latest video that you did on your channel was about your health journey, and that's part of what you share on your blog, and that's part of what you talk about on your YouTube channel, but your health journey. And you don't have to go into detail about it, but just how you've kind of come along in your health journey and where that has led you, being a healthier person in body. How has that affected your spiritual life too, as well? I'd be curious to know.
Well, one of the things I struggled with all my life was my weight. I didn't have the best eating habits when I was young. I a lot of processed food and things like that. So I really struggled with my weight my whole life. And after my husband and I got married, I was pregnant for a lot of those years. We went on to have 7 more children together. So I was pregnant for until 2011 was when I had my youngest child. She just turned 11. And every time I got pregnant, I gained a little more weight. And I had probably 40 pounds that I had to lose. And in another desperate call out to God, I surrendered and was led into changing my way of eating. And eventually that led me to intermittent fasting. And through that, just making that little, once again, I thought I was stuck. The enemy has us thinking that this is your life. This is how you are for the rest. You're just overweight. You're starting to hurt. I had developed plantar fasciitis and I couldn't walk anymore. That was one of the things I loved to do. And I was desperate again. And I knew God could help me. And I just cried. I said, I need something. I've tried different things. I've tried different diet things. And I knew he knew the answer. And I poured out my heart. I said, it can't be this difficult. You didn't make our bodies to be this way. There's got to be a way. And through this changing the way I ate, I started eating a ketogenic diet, but I also started with the intermittent fasting not long after. And within it wasn't even months, it was just weeks. My plantar fasciitis was healed and I could walk again. And I started to lose the weight. The weight was coming off me and I was losing weight and I was smaller than I was in high school. And I was totally just in awe that just changing a few things that I did myself, changes that I made, steps that I made, could totally turn again the trajectory of my life just by a decision, just by making a conscious decision that this is what I'm going to do now, and changed my life. And so many health benefits that I've received from, of course, fasting. And growing up as Protestant, fasting wasn't part of my life. You know, I heard about it, read about it in the Bible, but it wasn't something that we did. And so after becoming Catholic and through Lent and different times of fasting, when I came onto intermittent fasting, it was almost like it must be meant to be. It must be normal because fasting is part of your spiritual life anyway. Mm-hmm. It's good for you spiritually, physically, mentally. And I found that to be so true. And what it helped was with my spiritual life is it helped with, of course, my faith in God, knowing that he still had his hand in my life and he still was directing me. And also that it just pulled me into a place of that, what is that word? Discipline. Mm-hmm. It gave me a more of a discipline. And I'm one that I knew I needed a stronger prayer life. And I was one that was getting up. I started praying early in the morning. That was the only time that I could do a prayer time because kids. And I knew I had to get up before anybody got up. So I start my days very early. And I start them at 3:30 in the morning. I'm up and I spend my time in prayer and get my study and my prayer and things that I have to do. I get them done. But my health journey has helped me with that because it's helped me realize that when you want something, when you desire something, you'll change. It isn't just going to happen. God isn't just going to say, bloop, you've lost weight, or bloop, you're healthy now. You have to work with him. Just like the apostles, just like we have to work with him. And when he offers us a path, and we start walking in that path, even though difficult at times, if we keep going, we're going to come out on the other end in a totally different place than where we are if we just stay and not do those things. So
beautifully said, Joy, because I experienced that too, because I regularly fast on Fridays. I keep that going the whole year. And I about 4 or 5 months ago, I really started to do a much deeper fast than just the hour before receiving communion. That I was truly receiving his presence. And all I can say is it has intensified. When I received that host, I feel a more deeper sense of grace and just a sense that of awe and wonder about it. So, we're going to talk about this more because I had asked Joy, one of the books that she recommends with the intermittent fast is this book, Fast, Feast, and Repeat. And so she's been so gracious to say that she would come back and we would talk about this. Because as we know, as we were talking, the Catholics, we've always fasted in Lent, but there are benefits to maintain the fast throughout your life. And so that's wonderful. So just before we have to sign off, Joy, I'd like to ask you, what would you like viewers that watch this video, what would you like to be their takeaway from our conversation here today?
Well, I would like people to take away that no matter what your circumstance is, no matter where you are in life or what's going on around you, your environment you find yourself in, that doesn't mean that's where you have to stay. That isn't the end. That isn't your story written, period, the end. It's just a chapter. And I use that with my kids a lot. This is just a season. And I've learned that through my life. where you're in a season and seasons change. And all you have to do is put your hand in the hand of the one who can change it all and lead you, and then just take that next right step. We're not stuck. There's always hope, and there's always room for change.
Beautiful. That is just gorgeous. Inspirational, positive, as you always are. So I thank you so much, Joy, for joining us today. And my friends out there, check her links down below. And I hope that this video inspires you to take a look at your journey. Where is it now? And know that God loves you. No matter what, God loves you, and He is merciful, and He is there each and every moment to show you His love and His generosity. So thanks, Joy, so much. God bless. See you next time.
Thank you.